Imagine you're halfway through a game of Monopoly, and all of a sudden, now the bank says that when you pass go, it costs you $50 instead of them paying you $200. Well, that's pretty much what's happened to Gen X. We started this game of life with one set of rules, and we've watched them change over and over again. And we're not just frustrated, we're playing a game that doesn't exist anymore. And if you want to win, you have to realize that the rules that were set up in the 20th century playbook, they're definitely not the same as they are in the 21st. And knowing that, how do we still win? By the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one shift in strategy that can make the new rules work for you. Okay, point number one is work and career. Oh, how those rules have changed. When Gen Xers entered the workforce, we were still playing by the rules from the boomer generation, and even the generation before that. Work hard, be loyal, stay with one company, move up the ladder. We were all expected to start working early. Some of us starting our part-time jobs at 15, 16. And if college wasn't going to be your path, then you were sort of expected to have a full-time job when you turned 18. But if you did go to college, that degree was supposed to mean something. A career, a solid paycheck, even an advantage in the workplace. But that's when things started shifting. Now, college wasn't for everyone, but that's when tuitions started their upward climb. Factories were shutting down. Industries started disappearing. Cities like Detroit, Pittsburgh, they got the life sucked out of them. Corporate ladders turned into constant restructuring. Seniority started meaning less and less. And loyalty stopped being rewarded. And that guaranteed path, well, it started getting a lot less predictable. And in a major recession, underemployment, and now technology reshaping everything again. So how does Gen X win? So now it's realizing rule number one, that loyalty is a liability. Adaptability is key, and the sooner we realize that, the better. And this, of course, has come pretty much late for most of us Gen Xers. Some of us, we've already entered our 60s at this point. But where titles, where that used to be the moving goalpost, it's not about titles. It's about skills. Skills that you possess, and something that can't be taken away from you the way a title can. So skills, that's the hot commodity. That's something that you can take with you. So we can adopt the free agent mindset, because we were the generation of the side hustle before it even had a name. Start treating yourself more like a consultant than an employee. The rules have definitely changed, so the way we play the game has to change as well. Okay, in point two, let's talk about money and wealth, because it's all about the dollars and cents. And this might be where things have changed the most for our generation. I mean, we started with cash in hand, and then came ATMs, and then came debit cards, and now it's just numbers on a screen. And wealth building, I don't even remember that being a thing when I was a kid. Where I come from, your wealth, that was your livelihood, your home, and your family. That was your wealth. So we did what we saw. We worked hard so we could buy a house. That was the investment. And then somewhere along the way, it turned into buy as much house as you can afford. And then it became more than you could afford. And then 2008 hit, and Gen X was caught right in the middle of all of it. And yet, at the same time, most of us were the first ones in our families who were trying to figure out investing for the first time because pensions, they were disappearing, and in their place came the brand new 401k, the do-it-yourself retirement program, except that there weren't any instructions. Just, here you go, figure it out. And if you feel like you're behind, you aren't alone. I mean, we were all handed the same broken manual, and now retirement has gone from something simple and predictable to something that feels completely complicated. And it hasn't stopped with the introduction of the 401k. Retirement continues with each decade to get more complex. And then you take Social Security and all the uncertainty surrounding it. And I think a lot of people, they've already just written it off. Because whether it changes or not, we're already making decisions on what we think will happen later. And then there's credit. In our lifetime, credit went from just being a tool to now something that's everywhere.
Credit cards killed the layaway plan.
Something that's become a lifestyle. Something you have to constantly manage or carry. So let's talk about how Gen X wins with this part of the game. So the win now isn't just working and hoping everything will work out. Rule number 2 is to be your own central bank. Take the time to learn what we didn't get taught. This is something that we just cannot hand off anymore. At some point, you realize you have to be more involved in your financial life. And that means self-educating, trusting very few, and curbing consumer behavior. Because if not, it can rob you blindly over the course of your lifetime. I like to think of this as financial sovereignty. It's about moving from, I hope everything works out, to I have a plan and I understand the math and I understand the lingo. Because it's not just about building wealth, it's about knowing how to use it, how to keep it, how to not lose it in ways that you didn't see coming, and not assuming that anything is guaranteed anymore. So stop outsourcing your future to a manual that was written for a different world. That awareness, that's the advantage now. Okay, point 3 is the American dream. And I've touched on this already, but this one, it deserves its own space. The American dream, the version that we grew up with, that one came out of a very specific time, post-World War II America. And it was pretty clearly defined. A house in the burbs, a steady job, one income that could support your entire family, upward mobility, a sense that things would continue to get better, a couple of kids, a house, a fence around it. That's what we saw. And then as we got older, that picture started to shift a little more. Then it included getting a college degree, 2 incomes, 2 cars in the driveway, bigger houses, bigger expectations. And now, a lot of those things, they just don't feel as attainable as they once were. We should have stopped while we were ahead. So how does Gen X still win this? Rule number 3, time is the only real currency. Maybe the move isn't trying to get the old version of the dream to still work. Maybe it's even going back to where it first started. 1931, to be exact. That's when the term, the American dream, was first introduced by a man named James Truslow Adams. And the idea that he presented, it wasn't anything like post-World War II America. It wasn't anything like what it looks like today. The idea that he presented was very simple, that life should be better, richer, fuller for everyone, with opportunity based on ability and effort. That's what the original definition was. And we all know that even that definition could be hard to play by in today's world. I guess that's why it's called a dream. But it would be nicer to set our wishes more upon that original definition, rather than the modern one that has become too materially specific. Now, we can break the rules that say more is better. The pivot is deciding that a better life is not necessarily a more expensive one. We can trade the stuff that we were told to want for the time that we actually need. You see? Trading stuff for time. That's how you win the game in 2026. It's smaller, it's simpler, it's more flexible, it's fewer obligations, more control over our time, more control over our day, over our life. Maybe it's less house, less stuff to not feel locked in. Because holding on to an unattainable version of the dream, that just keeps you chasing more and more. And where is the end target? Okay, point number 4 is the cost of living reality. Now, when reality bites and just smacks you right in the face, that's when you have a Gen Xer who remembers when college was actually affordable, remembers when going to the doctor didn't come with that second thought of, how am I going to pay this bill? How much is this going to be? Remembers when paying for insurance, it was never great, but at least it fit into the budget and it did what it was actually supposed to do. Remembers when car maintenance was a $10 oil change and $30 for a set of new brakes. Not the scary financial event it can be now. We remember when rent or a mortgage, it didn't take up this much of your life. When retirement didn't mean downsizing or relocating or even moving to another country just to make it work. Retirement used to mean that one day you went to work and then eventually you didn't have to go anymore. And nothing more in your life had to change after that unless you wanted it to. We remember when 2 of the players, inflation and wage growth, where they used to be equally yoked. And now, inflation has been outrunning wages since the 1970s. Everything now, it feels like it requires more trade-offs. Working more, working longer, maybe even more debt, just to make things work. So how does Gen X win this? Rule number 4 is to question every normal expense. Awareness, paying close attention to everywhere your money is going. Questioning every single expense, especially the ones that used to not exist, but now they just seem to be kind of normal. But you need to question that and ask, are they really normal? Are they really required? The new rule is aggressive resistance. We have to stop accepting that modern costs are all mandatory, because this environment, it rewards the people who are paying attention to this. And it's unclear how much longer we can resist all of it, because some of the biggest expenses, like housing and healthcare, well, those aren't exactly optional, and they're getting harder to work around. So no, you can't control the cost of everything, but that's even more reason to decide that you're going to pay more attention to the other expenses that you can control. Okay, so far we've redefined the dream, but it's hard to build that new version when we're still carrying the weight of a dozen other fairy tales that we were told. So let's look at a few more rules that are draining our energy today. Okay, point number 5 is more lies, because it's not all big categories. It's a series of ideas that sounded right at the time, but didn't quite play out that way. Like, we were told technology would save us time, but instead it just turned our dinner tables into second offices and our bedrooms into scrolling marathons. We were told that work ends at 5 o'clock, but now it just follows us everywhere. We're also told that convenience would save us time, until it slowly has turned into dependency and a way to spend more time on things we probably shouldn't, like those scrolling marathons. For us, we knew that turning 18, that was a rite of passage. It was an event. I don't think it's that way anymore. Kids, they remain kids for a lot longer, at least throughout their college years, it seems. Many of us, we left home before age 20. But kids today, they just don't. We watched our grandparents, maybe even heard stories of their parents on how they retired, and maybe they didn't even survive much longer than that. And if they did, they went to the old nursing home. Today, our parents, they're living much longer. And don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for that. But sometimes the quality of that life, it isn't great. And most, they can't afford long-term care. And nursing homes, they seem like penitentiaries for the old today. So their care, that's falling on us. We were told that retirement meant freedom. And for a lot of people today, it means delay or transition, or maybe never. We were told that ownership mattered. So why is now everything a subscription or a lease or a payment that never ends? And even growing up, we were told that certain foods, they were fine, they were good for you. And in the 90s, you had fat was the enemy. Even we find out much later that incriminating studies about sugar and their effects on humans, those were buried and covered up for decades. We were being raised on foods that had been processed beyond recognition, but without the awareness that we have today. And now, a lot of us, we're dealing with that. And when you stack all of that together, it's easy to see why Gen X looks at things a little differently now. So what's the big fix? Rule number 5 is to reclaim your borders. The old system said that it would take care of all the details for you. But now, the reality, the system is set up to keep you subscribed, distracted, entertained, maybe even exhausted. So rule number 5 is about reclaiming your borders, guarding your health from processed junk, guarding your time from 24/7 work culture, and guarding your family from institutions that don't care about them. The Gen X pivot is moving from just being a passenger in this modern world to being a pilot again. It's the moment we stop asking for permission to live the life we were promised and start building the one that actually works. You question more. You commit more carefully. You don't just go along with things because that's the way they've always been done. You're playing the same game, just with a different strategy. Because whether we like it or not, we're still in the game. But we just have to make sure we understand it. And let me know in the comments, how have the rules of the game changed the most for you? And speaking of comments, I just want to make a quick shout out to all of you that have left comments on my videos. And I just want to say thank you. I'm very thankful that you take the time to share your stories, your plans, your strategies, even your heartaches, or even just letting me know that you enjoyed the video. I love reading them, and I always come away from those feeling more Gen X than I did before I read them, and I like that. Anyway, have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.